Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to be reacting to an article talking about MLB expansion, the pros and cons of each potential MLB expansion team, and how this potential Las Vegas move affects the expansion of the MLB. When is it expected to come? Things like that. That's what we're going to be discussing, and which teams do I think, or which cities do I think will get an actual expansion team. The first thing I want to say when it comes to the timeline of MLB expansion, we needed this first domino to fall with Las Vegas getting an MLB team, or at least looking very likely after purchasing the land, they will be moving to Vegas. The next domino becomes Tampa Bay getting a new stadium, which I've kind of become more optimistic is going to happen. Now, maybe it's because Tampa Bay's gotten up to a good start. They've got some momentum. You know, maybe they get better attendance this year, but it does kind of seem like the timeline in terms of MLB relocation / expansion, the next step is Tampa Bay getting a new stadium in place, getting the funding, and getting a plan to break ground on a new stadium outside of the St. Petersburg area, which has been a big issue for fans getting to games, things like that. And it will be a smaller stadium if they do get it. It'll probably have a capacity of around 30,000 and will very likely, if not definitely, include some type of roof. Probably would be more of a fixed structure. I'm not sure they would be able to afford a retractable roof, but I'm sure it would be something that would let in natural light. And then after that, once the Tampa Bay situation gets solved, once Vegas, their plans all get finalized, with Vegas, we expect them to go to the Las Vegas minor league new AAA park that opened in 2019 when the lease is up at the Coliseum, and that'll really kickstart their move as they continue to rebuild and in preparations for a potential 2027 opening day at their brand new stadium, which we still have yet to see renderings on. But let's get to this article. So here's a look at the pros and cons of the expansion candidates. So Nashville, there's a lot of pros for Nashville. I think Nashville is by far the most likely to get an expansion team. You can see in-state rivals with teams such as the Braves and Reds, and this is kind of the big one. It's kind of a trendy city right now, and it has shown it can support the NFL and NHL teams, well-organized expansion group. They have a few renderings on a potential stadium. It's not in-depth at all, but, you know, I'm sure that'll change as the next year comes and as they really pitch for a new stadium within Nashville. I would expect Nashville to be one of the main teams to get an expansion team if Tampa Bay stays put. If Tampa Bay moves, I would expect them to move to Nashville. But if Tampa Bay gets a new stadium, I am expecting one of the expansion teams to be Nashville. And then you can see cons, a new stadium will have to be privately financed. I really don't view that as a con. You could say that about any expansion city or any team that needs a new stadium in general. Financing it is always a miserable thing. It's just always how it works out. It's always tough. So I'm not sure, you know, that would be a crazy con. That's like a con for everyone. Nashville already built a 30K seat facility for a Major League Soccer team and recently agreed to $1.2 billion in city and state funding to, so yeah, I mean, if you're already asking for people money, if you're already asking people for money for an NFL stadium, you're probably going to have to privately finance a new MLB stadium, and I'm guessing it would probably be under $1 billion, but who knows now with inflation. You can see Charlotte, the pros. I mean, Charlotte's also a decent option for an expansion MLB team. It has a big U.S. metro area among the potential candidates with more than 2.7 million people. Natural rival. See, I don't really think the rivals matter all that much in terms of expansion. You could create new rivals, in my opinion. It just can't be too close to another team. The cons, MLB not likely to add two Southern teams in such close proximity. So, yeah, I would consider Nashville to be the odds-on favorite from that region of the United States. If the MLB does add 2 teams, they're probably going to want to go from that part, and it's very likely going to be Nashville over Charlotte. And then the big question is, does the MLB go back to Texas and get another team in Texas, or do they go out west to either Portland or Salt Lake City? There's also Montreal. So, I mean, Montreal is an interesting case. They were kind of talked about more a few years ago. They're not really talked about anymore. But I don't think Montreal has much of a chance right now, at least kind of the rumors that I've seen in terms of them getting a team. This is kind of like a situation. It would be like the Oakland Athletics trying to get a team like 20 years from now after losing Vegas. It's kind of like a similar situation where their attendance is just absurdly bad, and it's not all the fans' fault. I mean, you know, the team has been horrible, especially the Athletics, but it would be like, listen, would the attendance improve in Montreal the first few years? Yes, but how do we know it's not going to go back to the same levels it was back right before they had to move, because they were averaging an attendance of like, you know, 5,000, 4,000. It's just really tough to consider Montreal right now based off the other teams, in my opinion. And then you also do have Portland. So these are kind of the 2 Western time zone teams. You've got Portland and Salt Lake City. The Pacific Northwest could really use an MLB franchise to go along with the Mariners. There certainly appears to be room for a new team in Portland, which only has the Trailblazers. And then the Cons' plans for a new stadium sure look good on paper, but the expansion group will have to lock down a concept that relies mostly on private funding. I mean, I would say a major con for Portland right now, they've got massive crime issues. I'm not going to get into it, but yeah, listen, it is what it is. I'm sure there's decent parts of Portland. It's kind of like, you know, Chicago, San Francisco. There's good parts, there's bad parts, but yeah, there's some bads. I don't think they're going to Portland, personally. I think if they go west, it might be Salt Lake City, you know, a growing city. I know people were really critical of the, you know, idea that Utah could get an MLB team, but I think it would kind of be a breath of fresh air because it would be an open stadium. I will say the renderings for the stadium look horrible, but that's just kind of, I always love looking at renderings and things like that, and I was just kind of let down. I mean, you're pitching a new expansion team. Can you at least make the stadium look interesting? I mean, you're really going to do the bare minimum here. You're trying to get people excited about a new expansion team, and we see 3 smokestacks in the back. It reminded me of the China Olympics, I think the Winter Olympics in Beijing in, what was it, 2022, where it was just a complete dystopian look, you know, to it. So I don't understand why they pitched that type of, you know, design. It just looked really bad. Overall, I think it would be cool, and I think what they need to do is utilize the mountain view in the backdrop of their potential new stadium. I think Salt Lake City is definitely you know, a potential contender. You can take a look at the Cons. You can take a look at the Cons, by far the smallest of these cities with a metro population of 1.2 million. So yeah, that's a bit of an issue for sure, and that's kind of what people were saying. They were saying, well, they can barely support the Jazz. How are they going to support an MLB team? And it does become more of an issue because MLB and NBA are a lot different. In MLB, you're going to get a lot more home games. There's a lot bigger a chance there's going to be attendance problems because there's so many more games you're going to have people show up to. And Salt Lake City, you know, in April, it could be very, very cold. If you do have an open stadium, you could be dealing with kind of a situation that, I'm not saying it's bad. I think it's good we have open stadiums, but you see some of these stadiums like Progressive Field and Target Field. I mean, it's 40 degrees out, and they're having an attendance of like 11,000 people in April, and it's just tough to see. It is what it is, but that could kind of be a problem that the MLB might want to steer away from. So Salt Lake City there. And then it says, who are the favorites? We would love to see the Expos in Montreal, but it says they're picking Nashville and Portland. as the cities most likely to receive an expansion franchise. Yeah, I would say Nashville and probably Salt Lake City, or maybe somewhere in Texas. Those would be my two top contenders, and then they do have a full realignment for each division in the MLB. In the AL East, they're cutting it down to 4 teams. This is with the expansion. Baltimore, Boston, New York, and Toronto. Dude, that's a hard division for sure. The Central, it's the White Sox, Guardians, Tigers, Twins. They add in the AL South with the Astros, Royals, Rays, and Rangers. The AL West, Vegas, A's, Angels, Portland Mavericks. Okay, so when it comes to the names, I actually do like the name Mavericks, but I don't really like when they repeat names. So I would probably say like Portland Timbers. I think that's a decent name. Maybe Portland Trees. I know people will make fun of the name Trees, but if you'll get used to it, that's kind of how team names work. Like, there's a lot of weird team names that we're used to at this point, so the Mavericks is a good name, but we all know about the Dallas Mavericks, so I don't know. And then the Seattle Mariners, and then the NL East, the Mets, Phillies, Pirates, Nationals, NL Central, Cubs, Rockies, Brewers, Cardinals, NL South, Braves, Reds, Marlins, Nashville Stars. So that's another kind of repeat name with the NHL. That's the Dallas Stars name. I think the Nashville Stars sounds kind of cool. I would personally choose something like the Nashville Sound, just because it's a, Music City theme, thing like that. But I think the Stars is a decent name. And then the Diamondbacks, Dodgers, Padres, Giants in the West in a potential realignment. And then this is just kind of a Vegas odds type question. Which cities are most likely to get an expansion team? You can see Nashville almost even, 50% chance. Charlotte, I would say it decreases pretty drastically with Nashville being there. They're probably not going to want to add 2 teams from the same region of the country. And then you can see from the West, Salt Lake City and Portland, very similar, plus 350, plus 375. Vegas can be taken off the board because they're getting, the relocation. Montreal at plus 800. And then you do have 2 teams possibly from Texas, San Antonio and Austin, which is a growing city, rapidly growing city there, plus the 1,200, and then the field plus 1,000. I have heard, maybe San Jose being a team or being a city that might try and get an expansion team. I just think it's too small. So, in my opinion, I would say right now Nashville and Salt Lake City seem like decently safe bets. I do think the Portland design looks way better than the Salt Lake City expansion design, but it just feels like, based on where the cities are at currently, it's going to be Nashville and Salt Lake City. If it's not Nashville, it's probably going to be Charlotte. If it's not Salt Lake City, it's probably going to be Portland. So, right now, the first domino has fallen in the realignment / expansion with the potential move of the Athletics to Vegas. Once they get everything set, you're going to see Tampa Bay really push for a new stadium. If they continue to play this well, if they keep getting better attendance, things like that, maybe it revitalizes that fan base, and it helps them and gives them momentum to be able to fund the new stadium. They get that going, and then the MLB in 2024 puts full focus on expansion, possibly to Nashville, Charlotte, Salt Lake City, or Portland, one of those type of cities. Maybe Montreal gets a look, but that's just kind of the article that I wanted to discuss when it comes to the MLB and the expansion and kind of the dominoes that are going to fall next. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.